Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to your Innovation, Grants, Technology, Commerce, and Trade Committee. I'm joined by my colleagues, Councilmember Buscaino, Councilmember Krikorian, and Councilwoman Martinez. And Mr. Espinosa, are there any general public comment cards?
Yes, sir. We have a few general comments.
Okay, I see we have a number of cards. I think a card on every item from Mr. Herman and a number of cards from Ms. Sarnoff. I think to make it easier, I'll give you each to come up, do your 5 minutes, and you can talk about all the items at once, and you can divide the time however you like. So starting with Mr. Herman, if you could come up on items, all the items on the agenda, items 1 through 13, and general public comment.
Does that include general public comment, sir?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to start off with general public comment.
Break our equipment. Don't holler and affect our anyway.
This is the time for you to speak your mind.
I'm speaking my mind.
It's not appropriate for the speaker to play recording into the microphone. This is his opportunity to verbally address the...
So I can't use it?
You cannot use it.
All right. Well, the situation of this general public comment, which I would like to produce to you under the 54950 Brown Act, is that what is offensive, what is inflammatory, what is at the discretion of the public to voice its mind should not be censored, Mr. City Attorney, for the record. Just like this morning when I was at the public safety meeting, I was told to leave. But actually, I was thrown out of the meeting because the ACLU attorney that was there noticed why was his rights under the Brown Act violated. Very interesting aspect, huh? An attorney comes up to me and says, do you realize what they did to you? I go, yeah. They violated my rights under the Brown Act, ACLU. Thank you, Catherine. I'll be talking to you soon regarding that. But now going into item number 1. Mr. Ray Binust of the Board of the Convention and Tourism. I've been there. They have a very good venue. They offer you a lot of good drinks and food. But there's only one problem there. The exception that if you talk about programmatic access, nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to hear it. Title II discrimination, 121.31, and I have the right to ask the DA to file under 121.32 a civil action in violation of my rights to attend that bullshit ethics commission on convention and tourism. Who the fuck you niggers think you are? Who do you think you are at the convention center telling us that we can't walk on the property because we're homeless? We have every right to walk on any property that we, the public, all of you, the stakeholders, put money into as stakeholders. Don't discriminate. Now going into item number 3, Mr. Bloomfield, the mayor's relative reappointment of Miss Beatrice C. I won't tell you what Mr. Hunt thinks about this, but he told me just to remind them that airport commissioners should not go on the internet and be careful. Sex porn is illegal, especially when you're an elected official, a priest, or a police, or especially a fireman. Now going back into item number 8. Oh, Joe Buscaino and Mr. Bloomfield. Of course, I didn't get any activity to speak on old business at the meeting this morning. Item 24, homelessness, regarding $3 million Economic Development Administration. And what did the little Negro man say? Oh, this is a good idea. We raise bonds, we raise grants, and we get these homeless people into a situation that's better. Economic development. But the racists don't want people who are homeless, chronic homelessness, to be a part of the economic development. How fucking long have I been homeless with no support? I'm in that crisis. I fit that category. That's why my nigger skin is dark, because I have to hustle and bustle. Please don't interrupt me. Item 10, category exemption. That's a nasty word that John Walsh always talks about. But it has to do with Airport Commissioner's report relative to the amendments for Blue Van Joint Venture, DBA shuttle bus. Well, what about you Uber and all those Cuber people that pick up people from there? You fucked up the taxi system. I can't use my voucher to get a taxi to the airport. The nigger has to walk an extra block to get to the airport because my voucher doesn't pay for me to get to the airport when I fly up to Sacramento this Monday and give a holler out to Kevin De Leon. But actually, I'm visiting that woman from the east side, Miss Christina Garcia in the 58th district. Please, stop fucking with homeless people.
Next, Ms. Sarnow.
Oops. Sorry. Okay. Am I good? All right, thank you. Ruth Sarnoff. I think the intention and purpose of many of the items here are not clear in the future. It would be helpful to at least identify something that's real and tangible to make it clear what is being talked about. I mean, in other words, some context for it, even if it's just a small narrative. I noticed that there's no community impact statements on any items on the agenda here. And I think it should, I hope to make it clear to both this body and to the public that's here that these are very, very germane issues because they do affect the community. I remember being here at an earlier meeting, I believe, of this commission or a similar commission, where the whole subject of how for a whole decade, a law or an agreement, which was really an agreement to not use dirty crude out there for a part of the harbor out there. And in fact, for a whole decade, the dirty crude was used to, and there was no either knowledge or there was knowledge and it was just allowed to slide because it was good for business. But that affects everybody when we have pollution from the harbor or from the airport or from any other aspect of life here. Our people from California went to Paris on the climate change conference and said, we're going to lead the nation. We're going to lead the nation in dealing with climate change. And basically, we're not seeing it in the behavior of the people involved when they came back, except in small exceptions. I was so excited when I heard De Leon speaking. He's a young father now. He's thinking of what life is going to be like for his child. When his child gets my age, I'm 84, okay? So I've been in Los Angeles a long time. I've seen the patterns of where the developers have been in this city, basically, and they don't go through the California Environmental Quality Act at all. They're exempt from that. They're fast-tracked. And all of the people who are living in these blighted hotels that have not been being where they haven't been being fined and held to the carpet over decades, means that the money has not been flowing into revenue. And so therefore you have nothing on the revenue side because you don't do business the way a city should do business. And then you allow, now we have 29 skyscrapers that were part of the plan back May 18th, I think it was, last year, that was all paraded by Downtown News that described every one. If you look at that and think about it in terms of climate change and in terms of the world we live in, when we build these big skyscrapers and we put hardwood floors in them and marble and glass and lots of steel and we use water and we dig holes and we discombobulate an area that was all oil wells, it's full of pipes and stuff that are been bursting, and we're in earthquake territory. And then you throw on top of it that we invite tourism and we pay to support tourism and the film industry, and we bring people, encouraging people from Silicon Valley to come down here and be in these work-live buildings. That's what we should be building for the homeless, is a place where they could be communal and not live in isolation on the streets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Turner. Unless there's an objection from my colleagues, I'd like to move items number 1, 3, and 10 through 13 on consent.
Can you say that again? 1, 3?
Number 1, number 3, and then 10 through 13. Happy to hear any of those if you wish, but I think they could all go on consent. You guys okay with that? Corey? Yeah. Okay. Change your mind, we can reconsider it. So without objection, that'll be the order. Items 1, 3, 10, and through 13, which takes us to item number 2.
Yeah, and just for the record, the only cards we had on those items were the ones we've already taken.
Thank you for clarifying. Also, all the cards on all those items have been satisfied. Mr. Espinosa, would you read item number 2?
Item 2 is communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Ms. Velma Martinez to the Board of Harbor Commissioners for the term ending June 30th, 2021.
Great. Ambassador Martinez, as she was first appointed to the commissioners in 2013, and we are looking to seek your reappointment, and we'd love to get your thoughts on your experience as a commissioner and what you hope to achieve.
Well, it's been a very exciting couple years, as Councilman Vizcaíno can attest. We've accomplished a lot. You know, when I first came in November of 2013, we had the huge issue about TRAPEC. We've since surfaced other issues that have been in the newspapers of late. But we've also done some very exciting issues, such as just signed a lease with the developers to redevelop ports of call, and we're all very excited about that. We were also assigned to hire a new executive director, and we brought in Jean Soroka, who I think everyone would agree has done an outstanding job. And there's so much fluidity in today's shipping lanes when you consider that China, for example, has ordered its 2 major shipping companies to join, Costco and China Shipping. So there's just a lot of things to keep track of, and fortunately, the mayor in his wisdom and the city council in its have created what I think is a very good 5-member commission. We have different expertise that we bring to bear on the topics before us, so this is why I'm here. And of course, the port is such a huge economic engine for not only our region, but our country. So it's a privilege for someone like me to be asked to serve our citizens in this capacity.
Thank you. We had a chance to talk earlier, and I think you're a great member of the commission. Look forward to seeing you move forward. Colleagues, any questions or comments?
If I can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador, it's great to know that you want to continue to serve on the Harbor Commission. I want to take the time to recognize your commitment and leadership serving as president of the board. You're right. It's been an amazing 2 years since you took on this awesome responsibility. and we appreciate your commitment. If you look at the port and how much of an impact it has to the local, regional, national economy, it's pretty incredible. And your experience in dealing with international trade and as the ambassador, you bring a sense of knowledge, of experience to moving the port, not only operation, but also you also get the importance of being a good neighbor as well. Just yesterday, we opened the off-ramp at the John F. Gibson, the Harry Bridges off-ramp, a commitment from the port and the state of $50 million in infrastructure improvement there. You brought in a new general manager who understands the business well. And Mr. Soroka has been an incredible addition to the port. You also embrace the importance of improving our environment. The port has come a long way over the course of the last 10, 15 years in reducing emissions, and I know that's important to you as well. But equally important to me is moving goods, but ensuring that we move forward on the LA waterfront redevelopment efforts. You led an effort on addressing the Wilmington Waterfront as well. We're very close on solidifying the design for it. I know there's a few challenges ahead of us, but we recognize this project and the importance of the Wilmington Waterfront moving forward. And as you mentioned, you and your commission approved the 50-year lease of the new Ports of Call, now known as the San Pedro Public Market, and really appreciate your commitment to the waterfront. And I do know since we are moving forward on the improvements on the Wilmington and San Pedro waterfront, there's already been more investment coming our way. Even more so, bringing an amazing educational research project as Altasea, which we'll be hearing later on in committee today. Pivoting from Ports of Call, in our discussion that we had a lengthy conversation. I appreciate you taking the time. Pivoting over to the Cabrillo Marina way as well, and continuing to move forward on the commercial retail development. I'd like to hear from you some of the lessons learned on the commercial redevelopment efforts that we've learned from the Ports of Call, and I understand that it took a couple of years, but we're here now and want to know, your experience in approving this massive project that we've been calling for decades.
Well, any contract that involves a 50-year lease is a very important one, and certainly when public funds and property are involved. As the port, as you know, is a very interesting hybrid in that it is the nation's largest container port, but it lives in San Pedro, Wilmington, and surrounding communities, which have differing commercial interests. So one of the things that we learned is how these contracts are negotiated, both on the port side and on the commercial side, if you will. So we've been looking, as you probably know, very carefully over these last several years at those provisions of the contracts to see if there could be some tweaking of one kind or another that would be appropriate and would adequately protect our public interests.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the ambassador serving on the commission. She's looking out for the best interests of the port. And obviously she's skilled. She's got the knowledge as an attorney.
That's what happens when you have 40 years under your belt of practicing law.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Can't get away from that.
Right. So, and I shared with the ambassador, part of my challenge is, moving forward on these key projects on the commercial side and on the commercial redevelopment side. And kind of whenever we delay progress, but we delay progress for a good purpose, of ensuring that we don't get tied up in litigation that ultimately we don't have a project in place. But looking forward to continuing working with you and ensuring that our port remains number one in the movement of goods and number one to be in being the best neighbor that we could possibly have.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
No further questions or comments. Without objection, we will resolve to reappoint and approve your confirmation and move that to the full city council.
Thank you.
You for your continued.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item number 4, Mr. Espinosa, would you please read that for the record?
Item number 4 is a report from the City Administrative Officer and a communication from the Mayor relative to the notification of submission of a grant application and subsequent notice of award from Bloomberg Philanthropies to support inclusive neighborhood revitalization.
And just to note again, there's no other cards other than the ones that we've already been through. So, Ms. Daflos.
Sure. Camilla Fong, Office of the CAO, and with me is
Amanda Daplos, Director of the Innovation Team.
Well, the item before you pertains to the retroactive acceptance and implementation of the Innovation Delivery Team Program grant in the amount of $2.55 million from the Bloomberg Philanthropies. The grant performance is for a 3-year period from January 1st, 2015 to December 31st, 2017, and has a 1 to 3 match requirement of $850,000 over the lifetime of the loan, of the grant. The purpose of the grant is to establish an innovation team that will act as in-house consultants to address the city's most pressing priorities. So the Los Angeles I-Team was directed to focus on an initial priority of inclusive neighborhood revitalization. So I'm available for any questions you may have, as well as Amanda.
Opening comments? Go ahead.
Absolutely. I just had a few comments prepared, which is to say that, just as a little bit more context, the city was one of 14 cities that won a Bloomberg Philanthropies grant back in December 2014. The grant essentially sets up in-house consulting team, if you will, and funds staff to be on board for the city. And most importantly, work collaboratively with the council, with the mayor, with residents, and with folks from all over the city to try to address a big question, but as far as in the way of projects. So actually getting down to projects that the innovation team can launch and deliver in partnership with all the entities that I just mentioned. As I noted, we are one of 14 cities, but there are 5 other cities that were considered pilot cities around the world. And so now Los Angeles is one of really 19 cities worldwide that has this grant and therefore has sort of all the tools, if you will, that Bloomberg Philanthropies and the Innovation Team program make available both to our team and those that we partner with. We have right now 8 projects that we're working on. We've been delivering those projects really since the December-January timeframe. Some of them are fully in launch mode right now. Others will begin to launch and actually wrap up by September, at which point we'll move on to another priority area or another focus area, and again go through that same process of getting down to a series of projects in collaboration both with the public and with departments and with the council. So I'm very pleased to answer any other questions that you might have, but I really do appreciate the opportunity to be here in the city working with actually some of you and others on the city council, and then residents and many others here in the city that we've been able to partner with.
Appreciate that. It's exciting that we're getting this grant, or we've won this grant back in 2014, which kind of leads into and so kudos to everyone for doing that. But it goes back, why is it we got the grant in 2014 and we are now in 2016 formally accepting it?
I can touch on it at least from my point of view, which is to say that not unlike all the other cities, Los Angeles actually got started a little bit late. We were, like I said, not alone. Most cities got started late in terms of hiring. Many of the staff on the innovation teams come from private sector, so it took time to get the right people in the roles. And then as far as the administrative process of the city, I think it's just taken a little bit longer for the city to actually put the grant through. I should also note that our money or our funds were put into the mayor's fund, and so we are supported by the mayor's fund, and I did just want to make that note. And so I think just generally speaking, the process took a little bit longer from the city's point of view in terms of moving things through. So I don't know, Kimmy, if you wanted to add anything to that.
It was basically, as you said, it took a while to determine who was going to handle the administration and management of the grant, and they decided to have the mayor's fund serve as a fiscal agent for the city.
I mean, this sort of begs the bigger question we're looking at as part of this committee in terms of grants. I mean, my general view, we should either figure out a process that you don't have to come for this kind of, because it's kind of ridiculous to approve a grant 2 years into it. You know, to not approve it would mean that the mayor's office would not get reimbursed for the money that they've already spent, and that's not a good option, because substantively, we'll talk about that in a minute. It's a great grant. We should be getting it. So we either need to figure out a way to get the process expedited, or to cut this step out of the process, or to have more of a strategic look at the grants and then make those acceptances. Now, this grant does, as you mentioned, does commit us to matching money. Is that right? You said it was a 1/3 match. Is that?
It does, and I can speak a little bit more about the match. The match, essentially, I think the spirit of the match, really, quite frankly, is that each city has skin in the game, and so by that, cities can either, as many cities have done, just say in the budget we give, let's just say $1 million, and the innovation team can do X, Y, and Z with that. We can also raise it from the private sector, or we can get it from pro bono. We can have donations. We can do all sorts of different things. Here in Los Angeles, myself and my team, we've already actually surpassed the match. So the city no longer has to worry about covering what was an $850,000 match. We did that through a variety of channels. Part of that was because we needed to actually just fund our projects to be successful here. And the other part was because it's my responsibility as the director to actually make that happen. So the good news is we actually surpassed our match for the duration of the grant. So in approving it, you no longer have to worry about that. Bloomberg has signed off. And we've also brought new investment into the city and been able to accomplish some projects that otherwise would not have been able to be done.
So where did the money come from to do the match?
A blend of sources. So the city received a grant, which you're probably all familiar with, the Startup in a Day grant from the Startup in a Day grant from the Small Business Association. And so we've been developing the small business portal. So for those of you that have seen the small business portal, that's a project that my team delivered and is still in the process of delivering in partnership with a series of folks here in the city. And so that was a grant that was accepted last year in the amount of $250,000. So that, in our case, counted as a match. I have brought in some investment from several people in my network who've provided trainings to not just city staff, but to others in the Southern California region. So as an example, we had Deloitte Consulting, which was actually one of my previous employers, provide a series of day-long trainings to city employees on project management. And so we had about 50 or 60 people that participated in that. So we've done really a blend. We brought IDEO. Some of you may remember that we brought in IDEO last fall. We received a grant from the Innovation Performance Commission to do some of that. And then we got the rest of it donated from IDEO and others here in the community. IDEO is an organization that works to actually help take ideas to delivery, and so we had them here doing 4 different sessions over the course of 4 different days with many of the departments here in the city as well as the public. So that's just a sample of 3 different ways that we've been able to bring in funding: pro bono, cash, grants, and then just donations.
What do you think are the biggest or notable accomplishments for the innovation delivery team to date?
That's a great question. We have launched the small business portal. We launched that in beta on May 2nd. And so that is, I think, a really big victory for us as well as the partners we've been working with. It will launch in phase 2 in September. And, I know that was something that the city was quite interested in doing. And so we were able to transact that in the period of really 3 months with just heads down focus, a lot of collaboration, and engagement from residents around the city. I think we have also, we're launching this week a big program around the rent stabilization ordinance. We've been working very closely with the housing department on that one, with the goal of increasing awareness and engagement. And then we have a handful of other projects. I think the last thing I would note, just as a sample project, is what we've been calling the Index of Neighborhood Change. And what that is really an analysis of the way that Los Angeles neighborhoods are changing. And the goal of that is to make that available actually to you all, and then others in the city as appropriate for an analysis tool, if nothing else. And then there are a handful of other projects. As I mentioned, we have 8 projects that we're in the process of delivering, all which will be wrapped up by September and transitioned over to departments so that they can take the lead on implementing them. I think the other one I just might quickly mention is we're launching what's called Civic Youth this Saturday. So for those, if you're around and you'd like to join us, we would be more than happy to have you. It was a public program that we allowed youth between the ages of 16 and 21 to apply for. We have 45 people that have been admitted to the program based on class size only. We had much more in the way of applicants than we ever anticipated. And the goal of that project is over the next 6 months to do a once-a-month program for youth to help them just better understand how to engage in the city. And we have leaders throughout the city that are coming to help us deliver that training, some of actually who I've seen here in the audience. But I think a really great way to help create a program, and then we'll turn it over to those that we've been working on very closely with it, Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, Mayor's Office of Engagement, and then many from some of the council offices as well. But that is this Saturday morning. It'll be taking place in the Bradley Tower from 9 to noon. And of course, if anyone is here, we would love, of course, to have you participate. But those are some sample projects to answer your question.
The other thing I guess that's unique about this grant is that the reporting requirements from Bloomberg, I believe, are much stricter than normal state and federal grants. If you could tell us a little bit about the unique requirements and how you've been going about satisfying them.
Absolutely, I'm happy to do that. Bloomberg cares very deeply about all those that it invests in terms of cities, and they care very deeply about the partnerships that we create and also helping create sustainable programs. In order to achieve those goals, they meet with me weekly, and so I speak with those that have provided the funding at their leadership group on a weekly basis. We also had a series of deliverables that we were working very closely with our partners on last year. I think we delivered 30 deliverables from the time that I arrived here on May 4th through the end of December. And that is for them to better understand what our projects are going to look like, who our key stakeholders are, all with the goal of making sure that programs are sustainable over the course of time. So the deliverables, my weekly meetings, they also hold quarterly, what they call quarterly convenings. And the goal of those, I was actually at one last week with all the other directors from around the world. The goal of those meetings is for us to be able to share some of the things that we're learning in cities so that our counterpart directors can learn from us and that we can actually bring the best back to those that we work with here in the city. So it's a blend of in-person meetings, deliverables, weekly calls, and then there's probably a whole host of other things I'm missing. But we do general reports as well, as you might expect from a regular grant. Those are weaved into the deliverables, and then they actually do on-site visits as well. So many of our stakeholders had the opportunity to meet them in the fall, and I actually expect that one of the folks that work for them, who's the former mayor of Minneapolis, will be joining us here in July just to come see some of our projects. I do want to note that Los Angeles has been one of the more successful teams around the world, and we recently won one of their prizes that they give out for top performing teams. And so certainly that's a huge thing that I'm very excited about, my team is very excited about, but I also think more importantly than anything, it's something for our stakeholders to be excited about because we're asking a lot of people to work with us and do work on our behalf.
Colleagues, any additional comments or questions? Okay. So without objection, then we're going to move forward and approve the mayor's office recommendations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate it. Just a word, Ms. Sarno, you submitted a public comment. You guys are done. Thank you. A public comment card after the fact, but we did the full public comment. You had 5 minutes on all of the different items. So even though you just submitted a new public comment card on the item that we just heard, I can't give you more time than anyone else. Yes, there'll be public comment at the end. I thought you were talking about for this one thing. Okay, so next item is item number 5.
Item number 5 is a report from the City Administrative Officer relative to funding from the Innovation Fund for the Board of Public Works Green University Project.
Good afternoon. Hi. I'm Bianca Swan, Project Coordinator for the Innovation and Performance Commission. The Innovation and Performance Commission is requesting funding, or recommending funding, for the following Innovation Fund item. Board of Public Works, Green University, in the amount of $120,000. The Board of Public Works is requesting $120,000 to develop the Green University program. Green University is a certification pilot program in partnership with Los Angeles Trade Technical College for current City of Los Angeles employees, current City of Los Angeles Bureau of Sanitation employees to learn how to build and maintain green infrastructure systems within the city. The board has identified 4 tasks and the costs associated per task for the development and implementation of this pilot, which will take place over a 27-week period. Board of Public Works Commissioner Heather Repenning and Bureau of Sanitation Wing Tam are here to provide more details regarding the pilot program.
Sure. So I'll start as one of my roles as a commissioner on Public Works is that I chair our Green Streets Committee, which is, green streets and green infrastructure is something that this city's been doing over the last several years. Many cities are doing it nationwide as a way to address water quality requirements. As you, I'm sure know, we are very highly regulated in terms of water quality in our watershed. Currently, we're not meeting most of those requirements. There is a great need in the future to actually do a lot more of this type of work that you should have in your packet. But we've really been at the pilot level. Propo, we've managed through Propo and through the limited stormwater funds that sanitation has to build a lot of different types of projects. These are projects that collect stormwater, and in some parts of the city, they actually infiltrate it so that it becomes part of our groundwater system. In LA, given our drought and given our interest in increasing our local water supply, these are very smart projects, and a lot of times they actually improve the neighborhoods. I know, Councilmember Buscaino, you have in your district the Wilmington Drain, which is a great example of this type of work, as well as Machado Lake. Yep. One of the things that has come up is that as a city, we currently, our staff is not trained to actually be able to maintain these systems. These systems are living systems, and they require a different approach than gray infrastructure. And so, there's more science involved, and they evolve over time. And so this program is essentially to develop a curriculum that we can use initially to train our employees, but to really have that curriculum in place so that as we move forward and hopefully really increase our ability to do this to build these types of projects, we could actually partner with organizations like Pacoima Beautiful or the LA Conservation Corps so that we're actually partnering with outside agencies to help us maintain these projects. And so in that case, the curriculum would be in place and it would be very easy for us to train and share those skills.
Right.
So with that, I'll turn it over to Wing to maybe elaborate a little bit.
All right. This Wing Town with LA Sanitation, and I'll just mention a little bit in addition to what Commissioner Repenning and Bianca has mentioned, is that because I serve on the also the what they call national committee, the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, and the trend is for us to use green infrastructure as a way to clean up water as well as meet water supply. And there'll be more of these type of facilities going to be put in place. One thing that's keep coming up is, do we have anywhere that has any kind of skill set developed for operate, maintain a lot of this infrastructure? From those perspective, there's not. So we'll be one of the people that now start looking at in future, how can we transition our current worker, which they do a great job at, pipes, pump, treatment system, they're a great job at doing that. But we need to be able to transition now in the future, we could call green workers, be able to develop that extra layer skill set that looks at wetlands, the water part of the cycle, the plants, the wildlife. Those type of things need to be looked at in such a way that they develop those skill set, that we have our people be ready in such a way that they can maintain a lot of these infrastructure that we are investing a ton of money on. So it's a way for us, for workforce development, looking at current employees and how can we train them, and then continue once we develop the curriculum to continue training all the employee and be able to use that also for other employees in the city. So in front of you, some example of what those could look like from green street to green structures to wetlands. And our curriculum is basically working with local college like Trade Tech to help us teach some of this. It'll be a combination in-class training as well as field training so that people get a whole array of what they need to do. You know, when we look at this kind of training, it's not just about the pumps or the pipe. They have to look at the entire system, like our South LA wetland system that was put in. They need to know how much water gets into the system, how much water you need, will that plant survive, and what level you need, be able to say, hey, this thing's working, cleaning up the water, and supplemental water supply. So that's just a brief summary.
And are there existing programs like this out there? That, I mean, we're developing our own curriculum and our own program, but you know, the question is why don't we just go to other folks that are doing this kind of thing, or do they not exist?
Yeah, it's. I looked at it, and as mentioned, I work with the National Committee. Currently, there are different cities doing their own little separate thing, like pilot. But I think the city is probably kind of in the forefront in developing and implementing a lot of the green infrastructure. So there's limited, if not at all, any kind of training program available. So nationally. So if there are, we would glad to take advantage of using that. So this will be one of the first kind that we actually have an entire process, developing training, but then also certifying the workers are certified in maintaining, operating green infrastructure.
And is that certification, do they currently have those kind of continuing professional education requirements?
Currently, there's not such a thing.
So it's developing the requirements and developing the curriculum at
Correct.
the same time.
Correct.
Kind of creating our own market, but to create
Correct.
skill set. Would the courses be open to anyone besides city employees?
Our initial pilot is for current city employee as a way to pilot test and refine the program. Once we develop the entire curriculum and went through the whole process training, we will set up the entire program such a way that we want to first initially train all city employees, and then later, if this opportunity arises, it can become available externally.
And is LA Trade Tech doing any sort of matching or in-kind contribution to this?
I couldn't hear, sorry about that.
Is LA Trade Tech providing any sort of contribution or match to this program?
We actually have some discussion with them already, and that's something that we will have to develop as we develop this program along that line.
So currently, no.
Currently, no.
Colleagues, any comments? Martine, go ahead.
I'm under the impression that the Innovation Fund is supposed to fund new equipment or make the city more efficient. So my question, I guess, would be to the department. You're from the department, sir?
Yes, I'm with the sanitation.
So it seems like to me that we're actually doing is actually paying for a training program that perhaps should have already been incorporated in your transition as we're changing the infrastructure. Why are we using this fund to fund a training program that you should have already been incorporating and changing the infrastructure?
Okay, I'm not sure exactly in terms of the Innovation Fund what the goal is, other than say that currently it's a way for us to develop the extra layer skill set such a way that we will gain efficiency in innovation in terms of how we manage current people and how they transition to future type of skills.
I also think that the innovation that this supports is green infrastructure itself. And, you know, as we look at cities around the country, like Portland, like Philadelphia, that are doing a lot more of this work than we are, primarily because they have funding. We don't. But in LA, it actually makes much more sense for us to be doing a lot more green infrastructure than it does in other places because of our water supply challenges. So I think the idea, the innovation that this is meant to support is that is the further development of these green systems, because if we're not able to maintain them, we shouldn't keep doing them. And so I think what Wing and his team have discovered, like with Echo Park Lake, which was completed in 2013, a major city investment, is that they're constantly having to go back out there and optimize and, do water quality sampling and put different types of plants in. And so you're never quite done. You can't ever quite just walk away from these projects. But given that we are investing in them, we need to maintain them, and that currently the level of understanding on how to maintain them is not at a standard that I think we would like to get
I don't
to.
disagree with the work that needs to get done. My question is, so is the university going to get us to move on something faster, or are we just simply funding a training program for the Bureau of Sanitation, which in my opinion needs to be funded from another pot of money, not from the Innovation Fund? That's my question. I don't disagree with the work. I think it needs to be done. In fact, there's several projects in my district that would benefit from that. But that's not my question. My question is, I just question the pot of money that you're using to fund a training program. That's my fundamental question. Is this the appropriate fund that we should be using towards that, or should you go back and figure out within your department and the different pots of money of how you can fund this training program?
I think that part of what we want to do is we want to produce a curriculum. We want to say these are the skills needed. Put it all in one place. Initially, it will be used for city employees, but the idea is actually to be able to share that with potential future external partners. I mean, I think we all love the idea. We actually, on a project in CD7 right now, are under construction where an area used to flood. We are now capturing that water. It's going into our water supply, our groundwater, and it's putting a new sidewalk in where kids couldn't get to school in the past. It is actually being built by the LA Conservation Corps. And so I think that this is a great opportunity for partnerships. And so to the degree that we do want to, begin to bring external partners in the maintenance of these systems as well as the construction of them, to have that knowledge all in one place, and so we can say this is what we need as a city to be able to maintain these systems.
And like I said, I don't disagree with any of the projects that are currently underway. They're needed. My only question was in terms of what we're funding out of this fund. Is this an appropriate use of money, given that my impression of the Innovation Fund was that it was going towards new equipment or to help us help the city become more efficient. That's my understanding of the Innovation Fund. Unless things have changed, you all can correct me if that's changed, because that's my only question. I don't disagree with the work. I just think a training program needs to be funded through other pots of money and, within the Bureau of Sanitation. That's and perhaps leave this fund towards something like new equipment and providing ideas that would make the city more efficient. That was my point.
I think it's a good point. In fact, I was kind of on the fence about this one, and my first reaction when I saw it was exactly the same as yours in terms of we shouldn't be spending innovation money on just training. If it's a training program, it should be spent out of a training budget. Where I sort of am okay with it, or more okay with it, is not because it's funding innovative, training for innovative projects, because in that case we should be funding the innovative projects. Mm-hmm. But because in a way, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, what makes, for my view of what the Innovation Fund should be, it should be about things that, not just equipment, but anything that can make our city smarter and more efficient that can't be funded through the normal channel of things. That is a pilot program, not an ongoing training program. So if what's being piloted here is this unique partnership where we actually, instead of getting off-the-shelf training, which would not be appropriate for the Innovation Fund, where we're actually partnering with LA Trade Tech and doing something that's innovative and developing a curriculum for ourselves, which has never really been done before. It's always been finding someone who has that kind of expertise. And if that's the innovation that we're talking about, which is to develop something that we wouldn't have otherwise that would ultimately save us money and make us more efficient as a city, then I can kind of see it. Although I do share the concern, this is not a slam dunk innovation fund. In fact, a lot of the items on the innovation fund today are much more of the wobblers than we've had in the past. But, sell us a little bit more on why this is, not so much the projects that it can fund are innovative, but why is spending our money on this partnership with Trade Tech and something that should be on the innovation fund? And why did the Innovation Committee and Ms. Swan, why did the Innovation Commission decide that this was appropriate for the Innovation Fund?
Well, in regards to the Innovation and Performance Commission's view on this, they were very passionate about having an opportunity to fund for an idea that would kind of allow a testing ground for a pilot that would support green infrastructures. We are aware of drought situations, and it was just a great opportunity for the Innovation Performance Commission to provide that opportunity through the recommending funding for this item. In regards to the Innovation Fund, I feel that it does provide an opportunity to test and see what works and what we can implement further down the line. And I think that the Commission saw this as an opportunity to try something different, something that might be sustainable, and something that might be sustainable not just for the city, but for the green infrastructure systems that it would support.
Right. And obviously, we wouldn't fund this on an ongoing basis through the Innovation Fund. The only innovation that would be funded is this idea of developing a curriculum that's never been developed,
Yes.
and partnering with, the city partnering with Trade Tech in a way that's never been done.
Yes, and so it just kind of it provided a new opportunity, an innovative way in training city employees for something that does need to be addressed, and maybe creating a framework for that for current employees, future employees, and other departments to address issues as well. So the Innovation Fund definitely would like to take those opportunities to test out those ideas that may seem a little, wild at first look, but might actually be beneficial in the long run. And so the Commission really felt that this was one of them.
Colleagues, any other comments or questions?
Actually, I appreciate this discussion because I think it's part of a broader discussion about the Innovation Commission, and I think you've heard our concern about not wanting the Commission to become a place where things go around the ordinary budget process to get funded, in the same way that we've had similar challenges with the Neighborhood Council system, for example, where we, through the Neighborhood Council funding program, things in city services get funded that probably should have been funded in the ordinary course of the budget. And that can itself create inefficiencies, actually, when we do it that way. What was the original genesis of this Green University idea? How did it come up in the first place?
I think it was just talking to sanitation staff about, I think what this, so some of us are really very passionate about opportunities for green infrastructure in our city, and we see it as something that is really a way forward in the future. And I know our mayor is always very excited about how many lane miles we're paving, but I really would like to see us unpaving more, because it's getting hot, and we have opportunities in some of the poorest parts of our city to instead of letting stormwater run across the city, polluting the ocean, polluting the river, to actually keep it where it falls and make a beneficial use out of it and improve neighborhoods that are hot and that are poor. So it's part of a larger vision, and when we're looking at that larger vision, you look, what are the missing pieces that are keeping us from getting there? The big missing piece is real funding, because we have separate pipes in our city. A lot of cities that have a combined sewer and stormwater system can use sewer money for stormwater projects. We don't do that here, so we're limited. We are in conversations with the county about doing something. All the cities in the state are under the MS4 permit.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you short, but I think you've heard from us that we all love the idea and the vision that
so the
it's
genesis
pursuing,
was just really looking at what are the things that need to be in place to get to that future where we're doing this on a much broader scale. And one of the things that's come up is that there's not currently an existing place that is the repository of the skill set needed to maintain these over time. And we're at the point now where we've done enough of them that we should have that in place.
I could add that we look nationally, other places, find out if there's any existing program out there, such a way that could help us. But since there's not, that this would be the opportunity for us to develop that curriculum, that program itself, and kind of lead in the arena to say this is what we're doing for green structure in terms of operation maintenance downline to training our workers, and develop that curriculum in such a way that it could be used. Other people could look at it in such a way that, from that perspective, national perspective.
So I'm going to support this. I just wanted to kind of signal that what I understood the Innovation Commission to be primarily responsible for is not necessarily cost efficiencies. It can be improvement in performance. It can be other things as well. But the idea is to incentivize the development of new ideas. Mm-hmm. And that should not come from the senior management of our appointed department heads, because our appointed department heads should use the budget process and should go through the mayor's office and should go through the budget committee and do the normal thing. This is designed to get ideas from the rank and file, mm-hmm. from people who are out there doing the work, from our commissioners, from citizens who have an idea about ways that we could do things outside of the normal decision-making process that often ossifies us. So I think that's the point. What I don't want to see, and this is just kind of my statement for the future, I don't want to see, assistant general managers who didn't get their program funded through the vetting process say, well, let's just go to the Innovation Commission now. Mm-hmm. That's not going to work. So I just want to put that out there. But
it's a very good point. I agree, and I think, generally speaking, the ones that come ground up we're much more sympathetic to than the ones that come sort of from the top down, because of precisely the reasons that you're mentioning. So this really is a wobbler one. But I'm okay with it, but I'm happy to take a vote on it. Or any additional questions? Then
I just wanted to make the same point. My district would definitely benefit from the projects that are underway. There's no doubt about it. Of any place in the valley, my district by far has had to grapple with an enormous amount of environmental injustices. But like I said before, I also concur with Mr. Kokorian. Unless I see how you went about looking for additional money to fund something like a training program, which I didn't see in my notes, I don't know what else or who else you could have gone to for that funding. And when you're making these types of infrastructure changes that we want to move towards, you need to figure out how we're going to train our workforce. And this should not be the fund. So I, too, am not going to stop this from moving forward, but I think we need to caution ourselves. We need to be very deliberate about what the fund is for and make sure that we live up to those expectations.
One other thing, Mr. Chairman, and maybe you remember the name of this, I don't, but there's a state competitive grant fund that specifically funds workforce development job training programs. I can't remember what it was called, but I remember we used to get notified all the time that there's a new business in our district who's receiving this grant. Perfectly appropriate for this kind of a program. You don't remember that?
I know what you're talking about.
We'll find it. We'll get it to you. But whenever we can get state money to do this sort of thing, that's obviously a welcome option as well.
Okay. With that, I'm happy to take a roll call vote, but without objection, we're cautiously moving forward on this, and that'll be the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 6.
Item number 6, a report from the City Administrative Officer relative to funding from the Innovation Fund for the Innovation Team of the Mayor's Office of Budget and Innovation for the Secondary Unit Prototypes Project.
Good afternoon again. The Innovation and Performance Commission is recommending funding of $60,000 for the following Innovation Fund item. Mayor's Office of Budget and Innovations Team, Secondary Unit Prototypes. The Mayor's Office of Budget and Innovation Delivery Team is requesting $60,000 to support the Secondary Unit Prototypes Initiative. Secondary units are legal second units built on sites with single-family homes. the Innovation Delivery Team is launching an initiative focused on addressing the market for secondary units. By designing and constructing 2 secondary units in 2 different neighborhoods in Los Angeles. Of the $60,000, $10,000 will be used for the development of the community outreach for and community outreach for a secondary unit handbook, which will provide photos, plans, and guidelines for homeowners interested in building secondary units. The remaining $50,000 will be used to cover permit fees for secondary unit applicants. The Innovation Delivery Team has partnered with the city's Planning Department and Department of Building and Safety to review and provide feedback for secondary unit construction plans. And I have Innovation Delivery Team Director Amanda Daflos and Jason Neville to speak more on this idea.
Thank you, Bianca. And again, thank you for having us this afternoon. I think we'll take just a couple minutes to tell you a little bit about the project. I'm the director of the team, and Jason is one of our senior project managers who's been leading this project on behalf of the city. So the innovation team, as you know, is a team that's focused very much on helping the city do things that it's been interested in doing and really proving things through prototypes or through pilot projects. The secondary unit project is one that we've been working not just with the Department of Planning and Building and Safety with, but with several other cities to understand best practices in other cities for how they both regulate these types of units and how they also apply good design and equity and a whole host of other things that are very important to certainly the council here in the city, the mayor, and others. So we've done quite an extensive amount of research looking at both what's happening here in Los Angeles and then creating a program that we really think can help the city do this thoughtfully and help also create more in the way of legal units or help bring those that are illegal right now online illegally. Just in terms of the project itself, we have a handful of partners that are working with us. I just wanted to touch on those very briefly, which is Pacoima Beautiful. We've been working with LA Moss, City Lab, UCLA, who are in all cases, all the ones I mentioned, some of the leaders here in Los Angeles as far as the research that is applied to this project. We've also been working very closely with Genesis LA, who's provided much of the funding actually for this project, and Habitat for Humanity and Homeboy. So we've been able, as the I team, to bring together what we think are a really phenomenal set of partners to prove through 2 prototypes a way that we can, as a city, begin to do thoughtful policy on secondary units, knowing that it is something that's been very important to all of you as council people, as well as the mayor and others as residents in the city. I think the last thing I would mention is that this funding will go towards 2 things, which I would love for Jason to tell you a little bit more about, but it really is around education, so that as we as a city look at these units and want them to exist legally and thoughtfully and in a well-designed way, that we can create a handbook and actually rise to, I would say, surpass other cities around the country who have already been doing this. We've taken a nod from them and are looking at some of the things that they're doing, and so some of the funding would go certainly towards that. So I'll turn it to Jason just to talk about the grant itself and what we're asking you all to approve today, and also how we think it fits in. Just Ms. Martinez to talk a little bit about some of the things that you asked in terms of how it fits in with the Innovation Performance Commission. It's something we've given a lot of thought to.
Jason Neville, project manager on the innovation team. So the 2 pieces of this, as Amanda mentioned and Bianca mentioned, are $10,000 for a handbook that would be a publication of the Department of City Planning that would be available publicly through download and through hard copy for folks in the city, homeowners that wish to build a secondary unit, to help them understand how to do it, context-sensitive ways to do it. And that handbook is going to be designed after we finish this prototyping project, the demonstration project. The permit fee waiver, I should back up and say that a lot of other cities have found that developing handbooks, user-friendly handbooks for residents has been really helpful in helping them understand what's allowed, what's not allowed, how to go about the process of secondary units legally. San Francisco, Santa Cruz, Seattle, Portland have all done really great handbooks, which are the models for this, and why the city folks in the city planning staff level asked us to work with them on the development of the handbook. The second piece is permit fees. We have looked at what other cities have done to innovate around creating excitement and interest in building second units, and one of the ways to do that is by waiving permit fees for a duration of time to help sort of kickstart the market for these. And the funding for the permit fees would go for a waiver of approximately 10 permits for the first 10 homeowners that would apply for a secondary unit permit in the city subsequent to the completion of the 2 demonstration projects.
I might just add one quick thing, which is to say that we recognize that the policy in the city is something that for a very long time has been one that folks have had points of view on. For us as innovation team, I think that's why we were asked to actually look at it and really help the city convene some of the thought leaders in the city to really provide a way of looking at this and thoughtfully. And as part of this prototype project, really the goal would be for us to be able to come back and say, here's what we learned. And I would say 6 months into the prototype project, we already have learned so much in terms of what folks want to do, what is legal, and what might be advisable or not in the neighborhood context. So we're excited to certainly deliver the prototype projects in partnership with those I mentioned. We've raised the money to cover most of it, and I think this would be just one part of it to help this innovation sort of rise to the top and be something that the city can be proud of.
How does this all fit in with Mr. Cedillo's housing initiative that he put forward in terms of the secondary units?
So we've partnered with CD1 and CD7 with regard to where the prototypes themselves will take place. And so Councilperson Cedillo has been a part of really helping us guide the prototypes. We've had families, and I can certainly talk at length about sort of the process of the prototype project if you wish, in terms of how we've selected families, how we brought folks online. But I would say that in CD1, we've been working very closely with them to guide the prototype project itself and help it fit into Councilperson Cedillo's agenda.
How did you choose the location for the homes, the 2 homes?
The physical locations themselves, the families, we did a whole bunch of outreach with Pacoima Beautiful and LA Moss. We had them lead sessions, several sessions, and we had them meet with families. And of course, they need to meet financial criteria so that they themselves can meet the criteria of this whole program or the prototype project. And then so first criteria was financial criteria. Second criteria was that they could legally be built and be one that could help us drive policy and understand sort of what's hard or what's easy about these. And then the third piece was that they were willing to be part of innovation and they were willing to be part of something that was a partnership between the city council and the mayor's office, certainly our team, and then all the partners that I mentioned. So I hope that in a very long way answers your question.
Colleague, Martina?
Yeah, so, as policymakers, I believe that we need to take some policy actions on second unit dwellings before we start developing outreach material, protocols, and incurring additional expenses on this matter. I think we've only taken the first step, which is to repeal the original ordinance, but that's about it. Again, and this is another one that I have an issue with in terms of, is this something that the Innovation Fund should be funding? This is clearly another outreach material, and shouldn't it be, if as policymakers we move in this direction, shouldn't it be something that the planning department should be funding and not the Innovation Fund? So there's 2 issues that I have with this item. One, the policymakers of the city have not taken action on what we're going to do with second unit dwellings. And before we even do that, why are you developing materials? We haven't even taken a position on this issue. And 2, I don't believe that this fund should be used to develop outreach materials that I believe the department should be paying for, if the policymakers of the city move in that direction.
Sure.
So
Happy
I would
to
like
answer.
this item to be continued, Mr. Chair.
You wanted to respond?
Sure, I'm happy to respond, which is to say that, we wouldn't be developing the outreach. And so from a timing point of view, that wouldn't happen until sort of the prototypes are completed. And so from a timeline point of view, we're aiming for the end of the year. And so those are expected to be kind of on the ground by December. Therefore, we would need time to design something, and I wouldn't expect that it would actually be out in the public until sometime mid next year. So from the outreach point of view, that's what that would be. And it would be informed by the work that's being done, and rather than the policy come after the fact, it would be that I think by mid of next year, hopefully we would have some resolution on some of the things that you've raised as concerns. So hopefully that answers
So you
the question.
wouldn't start developing the outreach materials until?
No, the prototype projects are aimed to be education, really, for the city, so that as the city looks at policy, that we can look at these prototypes as a way to inform the policy that does get made. So the goal is that we would share back all of the lessons learned with those that are currently in the policy discussion. Many other cities have used prototypes as a way to do that, to really learn about what makes it hard to build these, and also what makes it sort of hard to build them legally, or why folks are building them illegally. So our goal is to really better understand why people are building these illegally, and how to make folks more aware of the fact that there is policy currently in place that they should follow, and help them better understand that. So the prototypes are meant to really help us all learn as a city, and then once we learn and once we understand the policy piece, once that moves forward, come back later and do the outreach. It's not being developed right now.
That's even more concerning to me. So are you saying that you want to develop a prototype for either an illegal ordinance or one that still hasn't been developed yet?
No, the two prototypes are in compliance with the current state law and the local law. And so then so that's the two prototype projects. The lessons learned would be things that we learn as we go through the experience of doing that. And then that would be something that would be shared back with those that are making the policy over time. But the policy currently, the way that it is what would apply to this current project.
Currently, currently secondary units are allowed.
That's correct.
In fact, how many permits are in the pipeline right now for secondary?
Talk a little bit about that.
Don't have the number in front of me, Mr. Chair, about the number of permits in the pipeline. I believe it's in the number of several the low dozens, but I don't have that. I can get that back to you. I would think it was in some reports that have recently come to Plum related to the.
Less than 100.
I believe so, yes.
And then, as Ms. Martinez points out, we're going to develop policy, trying to find legal policy that we can work in this realm. The policy that we had was basically not. We're having trouble with it in court. We repealed it.
Yes.
So the state policy of the secondary units is what stands. Now, what's being asked for us today does not impact your ability to do these two pilot programs. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That is correct.
That is correct.
So the only thing that the Innovation Fund is being asked for is for these outreach material and developing a handbook to make it easier for folks to get the secondary unit.
Yes, sir, from the learnings of the prototype, so the photographs, the plans.
Although, to Ms. Martinez's point, if we do, in fact, over the next 6 months, figure out a way legally to both incentivize and restrict the secondary units, because there's certainly movement on both fronts to try to get as many of those units as we can, but also to have certain restrictions so that they're not as free in every neighborhood for every reason to be done, and so that ultimately your outreach material would have to reflect whatever policy we make. So that there's, I think it's a decent point to say about in terms of the materials, making sure it reflects the policy versus getting too far ahead on the materials. So I'm prepared to continue the item unless any colleagues want comments or questions on that. Otherwise, and continuing the item is not a no funding of the item. It's simply that we're continuing it. We'll get additional information on it maybe as we figure out a better way through the commission to pinpoint exactly what the funding would be used on in terms of the policy, to make sure that we don't end up being redundant or having to redo the outreach material after the city comes forward with nuances to the secondary unit policy, which is a controversial policy, but it is one, currently basically are just echoing the state policy. So without objection, that'll be the order. This item will be continued, and we'll move to item number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
What's that? I did not. Yeah. We don't need to have a specific timeline on it. We can just continue it until they're ready.
Item number 7 is a report from the City Administrative Officer relative to funding from the Innovation Fund for the Information Technology Agency to engage Google Innovation Lab.
Good afternoon again. The Innovation and Performance Commission is recommending $160,000 for funding for the following item: Google Innovation Labs, presented by ITA. ITA is requesting $160,000 to cover the costs associated with bringing Google Innovation Lab to collaborate with city departments on developing innovative approaches to address city functionality and processes. Google Innovation Lab will work with departments on 5 focus areas. Google will facilitate meetings with the working group to brainstorm solutions. Using their resources, Google will build out solutions for departments to implement. Google will work closely with ITA to ensure that any solutions implemented are supported and functional. I have ITA's Ted Ross to provide additional information regarding this idea.
So Ted Ross, General Manager of the Information Technology Agency. So I certainly have listened to the previous discussions. And as a General Manager of the Information Technology Agency, I would like to let you know that I'm simply pitch hitting for the person who proposed this idea. So I want to put that on the record. Be very clear. Be very clear. I'll start off with that. I noticed you went with Assistant General Manager. Then I said, well, what does a GM provide to the conversation? When we look at the types of issues that we face in the city of Los Angeles, you know, there's a mixture. There's a mixture of a lack of resources to address them. But I think there's also a mixture of a lack of innovative thinking and innovative approaches to resolving some of these very same issues. The Google Innovation Lab was something that came out about a year ago in which Google created partnerships with government. And it's only been a short list of governments who've actually done a Google Innovation Lab, in which they take what they call Google 10X thinking and really innovative thinking, as well as their leadership, their capabilities, their expertise. They partner with government to tackle 5 challenges. We thought that this could be an excellent way of instilling innovation and efficiency at the City of LA over 5 things that were really, really, really important to us and really, really, really important to the residents, the businesses, and the visitors in the City of Los Angeles. What it involves is step 1 is training. Well, yes, I'll go that way. Step 1 is training. Effectively, Google, the same people who are doing autonomous cars, who are creating drones to try to detect cancer, who have hot air balloons that provide internet connectivity, would train a set of 50 individuals from the city to be able to think through innovative approaches, business process reengineering, et cetera, to basically say, take all your beliefs, set them aside, and let's tackle these issues in a fresh new way. Google would also be facilitating. They dedicate 4 to 5 employees over 7 weeks in which they conduct 5 in-person sessions, as well as they do Google Hangouts between the sessions across 5 different teams. They'll be implementing solutions. We did our research when we looked at what they did at Kern County or at San Joaquin County. At Kern County, one of the 5 that they created was an automated interview process. So the challenge was around citizen engagement. And they created an automated interview in which a resident or a citizen could go through a series of questions and be drawn to various places in their existing web portals. So it was a way of trying to use your voice and use speech to try to bring you to different services. So they've already been driving people to substance abuse at their county, to job training, to applying for jobs, in which they took a lot of their content and they used an innovative solution to be able to engage their constituency better. At San Joaquin, this is one that certainly is very personal to me. They were able to reduce a 40-day onboarding employee process down to 7 days, in which they didn't just sit there and just tackle a problem. They innovatively thought it through. They worked with subject matter experts. They implemented real-world solutions. So at the end of it, they had a process and tools to be able to substantially change the way they approached it. When we approached our list of 5, we sent out an email. I personally sent out an email. I included every council office, the mayor's office, every general manager, and we solicited input from across the city. And we ended up shortlisting a set of 5, which I'll summarize, and I could certainly speak to them in more depth. Number 1, that seemed to pop up on the list over and over again, is what we call Civic Engagement for a Stronger LA, and that's around citizen engagement. The goal really is to try to strengthen the connection between Angelenos and their city government to increase identification, involvement, et cetera, and so forth. We've got lists of sponsors. We've got partners. Basically, each of these items has a team of 10, a couple of leaders as well as sets of subject matter experts who will work with Google around that topic. Number two is what we call preventing falling into homelessness, which is really about preventing homelessness with the goal that focuses on permanent housing solutions to prevent people from falling into the homeless cycle. Number three is what we call building a better LA from within, which is really around workforce recruitment and development of the city workforce, which, as you know, is undergoing a huge succession planning type of issue with the large amount of retirements. Number four is what we call supporting resilient communities in emergency situations. It's around public safety. This was a unique one. Our police officers are very good at stopping crime. Our firefighters are very good at stopping fires. But one thing we found out from fire department and from neighborhood groups is there's an aftermath to a fire, let's say, in which how do you end up providing services and resources to a community that suffered a fire or to individuals that suffered from it too. And this is one that the Mayor's Office, Office of Resiliency, and the fire chief himself were proposing, and we got a lot of traction, a lot of interest around that. Number five is what we call a business-friendly LA. And I know there's been a lot of discussions on economic development, but to try to approach it, in which we've got our Department of General Services and Office of Finance partnering as the sponsors of that item. In a nutshell, it's about taking 50 city as well as some outside of city individuals, bringing them together in facilitated discussions, training them in innovative private sector thinking to attack problems, and leveraging Google, which is not just using Google tools to implement solutions, but even just other industry tools. You know, based on our analysis, this isn't a Google money-making venture in any way, shape, or form. It looks like they actually lose a little money when it's all said and done, but I think the marketing from their perspective is important. And I could probably try to summarize it this way. At Google, they do a lot of innovative thinking to fix problems. The city has a lot of really sexy problems, so to speak, the types of things that organizations like Google, which pride themselves on innovation, want to show themselves as providing solutions for. So I'm certainly open for any questions, and this is simply a proposal before you.
So help us understand what the $160,000 would cover, because it's, you know, $32,000 per session here, and each session is 5.
So it's 7 weeks, 5 in-person sessions at the Google facility in West Los Angeles. It'll include bring everyone there. They'll assign 4 to 5 employees over the course of 7 weeks.
The 50 employees are going on city time or their own time?
So there'll be city time as well as Google Hangouts.
Okay, so that's the cost to us. Hopefully it's a benefit to us down the road, but
that's correct. One thing they found in their experience is when you do it on site, you find people don't attend, people get distracted, people step out for the work. And so what they're hoping to do is really engage everybody to truly sit down and tackle the problems. These are big, meaty problems, and if they don't provide their full attention, likely we won't have good solutions.
And the $160,000, that all goes to Google at the end of the day?
It all goes to Google at the end of the day. So it provides a cart, that they call it, around innovation, which they provide laptops and solution and tools around it. It provides the training. It provides the facilitation. It provides the employees who are assisting with both solutions as well as brainstorming. And it also provides the solutions themselves. So using, let's say, the Kern County example, that automated agent that actually takes your voice and it records the stuff that you're asking for and it directs you to the city service was developed by Google, and it was part of the $160,000. So they actually developed, these aren't just plans on how to fix the problems. It does include solutions to fix them too.
What do you mean?
So let's say Kern County, they said, we have all these different resources and our citizens aren't really utilizing it. The working group seemed to come to a conclusion that that automated attendant would be the right tool. Google built the automated attendant and provided it so that here you have something that you're speaking to using Google technologies that's directing you to the proper resource. It was like a virtual assistant for Kern County. And so that was one of the solutions that was actually delivered as a part of the Innovation Lab cost.
And so as part of the cost, it's not just, because if you just break that money up into the trainer costs,
right,
it seems a little exorbitant.
I would agree with you. I want real solutions. I don't want plans. I don't want ideas. I don't want dust collectors. I think it's extremely important to have solutions that are implemented at the end of the 7 weeks. And that is the assurance that we're receiving.
And what kind of investment are they making to do those implementations? We don't know.
They're dedicating 4 to 5 employees, and they're often bringing in other staff too to be able to assist with it. So I think it often depends on the nature of the challenge and the nature of the assignment. But like I said, based on the math that they were doing, this was not a money-making venture for Google. This is something I think that they stake their reputation on, and they want to be able to show innovation in very meaty, very public types of issues, in which they're not just coming in there and telling everyone what we should be doing. They're actually implementing solutions. San Joaquin Valley was the other example. They implemented solutions at the end of it so that you not only had a streamlined process to go from 40-day onboarding to 7-day, you actually had the tools where you'd enter names, where you'd workflow, where you'd route, et cetera.
So what kind of commitment do they have then when the class is over, so to speak, to continue on with us to make these solutions? Is there a time limit, or how does that commitment manifest?
That's a question I couldn't say I could answer fully. They make a commitment to work with us in an ongoing fashion. As you well know, Google has been a solid partner for the City of LA for some time. We leverage their products for email, calendar, et cetera. And we meet with them periodically like we do with many other vendors. I could work with them, and we'll work towards some type of assurance they're very excited about this type of opportunity. I don't think it'll be hard for us to get an assurance that they'll work with us in an ongoing fashion.
Some other questions with colleagues? Any comments or questions on this? I mean, I would like to see, I don't necessarily want to hold it up, but I want to feel better about it. I want to understand what that commitment is going to be going on into the future, because just doing the numbers, the $32,000 per session for 5 sessions, you're paying a teacher basically, or an employee who's already being paid by them, depending on how many you have, $6,000 to $8,000 per set. It's a lot of money, but if they're doing more than just facilitating and they're actually committing to working with us down the line, then I feel a little bit better about it. You were saying it's worked in other municipalities.
Yes, it has. And in the state, multiple counties have participated. This came out around last year.
Colleagues, questions, comments? Okay, so with that caveat, the recommendation will be to move forward on this item?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so Mr. Smith, would you read item number 8?
Item number 8 is the motion from Councilmember Buscaino and Blumenfield relative to the status and progress of the $3 million Economic Development Administrative Grant application for the Alta C redevelopment project.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman. Doan Liu, Chief of Staff at the Port of Los Angeles. I believe the original motion was to get a status report on the Alta C EDA grant. The folks from Alta C will be following me and giving you a detailed status report on the grant, as well as an update on the project itself. My understanding is the Port of Los Angeles is a co-applicant of the $3 million EDA grant. It's in process. And so we hope to have a report shortly on whether or not we receive that. But also, as part of the motion, the councilman asked for other ideas that the port might have about potential EDA grants that we might apply for. So we've done some work internally. I did need to tell you that we did have a previous grant application in for Terminal Island for some fish, freezing opportunities there over at Fish Harbor. That was put on hold, but it's something we can revisit if that project comes back. But in the meantime, some of the ideas we had was on the San Pedro Waterfront. I have 3 ideas that I wanted to share. One is San Pedro Waterfront, the continuation of Sampson Way. So we've just issued the RFP or the bid for the construction of the first phase of the Sampson Way realignment, and then the continuation of that would be a second phase that we could do from south of Port Sacal around the SP slip down to 22nd Street, which would connect to the Alta C project. So that's an upcoming project that we think might have some applicability to the EDA grant. A second opportunity would be on the Wilmington Waterfront. As you know, we're finalizing design on our waterfront project there. Phase 2 will be some parking lots and a pedestrian grade separation. And that will be going out for design and bid soon. But that's another opportunity that we might be able to convince EDA for infrastructure grant there. And then lastly, the former Southwest Marine shipyard. We've got some interest from other industries for reuse of that shipyard. It's a challenging site. If there's a way to find the right tenant, which we're working on, we might be able to apply for some infrastructure grants for that project as well. Before we move on to Alta-C, happy to answer any questions about the grants.
Again, thank you, Doan, for your report. It's exactly what we were looking for while we continue this item. Appreciate the work that's been done and looking at a few other projects to benefit from potential EDA dollars. And I'm happy to know that the port signed on as a co-applicant. I want to thank the ambassador and her commission for moving on that front. Where are we with the application today? Is it in the hands of the federal government? You want to bring up?
When the Alta-C folks come, they can give you an update as to where the current status is. But yes, the application has been completed by Alta-C and the port, and it's in the hands of the Department of Commerce, EDA.
Thank you. Just anxious to hear the Alta-C report.
Yeah, so we can have the folks from Alta-C come up. And thank you, Don.
Thank you, Don.
Thanks.
If Mr. Chair, if I can tee this up, colleagues, you know, we 2 weeks ago approved the 50-year lease agreement with the Rakovich Company and Jericho Development in the redevelopment of the St. Peter Public Market. We're doing everything we can to bring in amenities such as the new ports of call development, but more importantly, it's also important to diversify the workforce. And we feel that when you hear this presentation, you're going to see the potential that Alta-C will bring to the LA waterfront, bring in research, marine science-based research, and SpaceX is already there today. We're so excited to have Alta-C as part of the LA waterfront movement, and just turn it over to Jenny for their presentation.
Please, go ahead.
And a special announcement to come, so stay tuned. Those listening on council audio, hang on. And
we're very excited to be here. I'm Jenny Crusoe. I'm the Executive Director of Alta-C. I brought Sean Jensen with me, who's the Manager of Government Relations and Strategic Partnerships, and then Lee Wen, who's one of our great architects on our Gensler team. But before I launch into our update with exciting achievements, I would like, Sean, can you just clarify where we are with the EDA grant?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having us today. So we were last year on April 5th, and at that time, we had just submitted the application on March 31st by ourselves, just as Alta-C. And at that time, we knew that EDA would ask for the port to sign on as co-applicants. Timing worked out very well. On May 2nd, we received a letter from the EDA stating that they were favorably reviewing our application, but that they did need the port to sign on. On May 5th, the port agreed to sign on, and within the timeline that EDA provided us, we were able to submit signatures from the port to sign on as co-applicants in time. That was by June 3rd. So currently we're going through the due diligence process with their environmental team at EDA, and their fiscal year ends in September, so they have until that time to make their final determination.
Very good. Thank you for that update.
The committee has, they have recommended to fund the full $3 million.
Correct.
So I'm sorry, say that again. Hold on.
Which committee recommended the $3 million?
So the EDA review committee has recommended with an intent to fund the full $3 million. So that happens before you go into due diligence, and that's where we are.
Fantastic. So that's good progress. That's good news. Now it has to get blessed by the Department of Commerce. It has to get now blessed by the Department of Commerce.
Yes.
Got it.
Exactly.
So what are the next steps or the next hurdles?
They have just subject matter experts for environmental policies, engineer experts looking at it, and they have basically a time frame between now and September to make their final determination and just get all their boxes checked before they make the grant agreement.
And then the grant agreement will go to the Harbor Commission.
Fantastic. Great, but it sounds like the discretionary decision was made in a very favorable way, and now they're just, as you said, doing the due diligence. If we can check those boxes, then the grant.
Exactly.
That's
So we're
huge
very
news.
happy.
That's wonderful news. That's great.
So can you,
Awesome.
first
Yeah,
slide,
just
we're going to, in respect for time, we're going to rush through the updates on Altasea. So the first, the first slide, what Altasea is we're redeveloping an amazing 35-acre man-made peninsula with our partner and landlord, the Port of Los Angeles. And what we're creating is a campus of innovation that is bringing experts together in science, business, education, and of course is built on the community leadership. And what we're doing is we're concentrating the build on a facility that can bring rapid solutions to food, climate, energy security, and whatever else whatever other challenges we meet when we explore the ocean. Because I think it's an amazing fact that only 5% of our ocean has been explored. So there are going to be other things that happen as we explore the ocean. So Gensler has designed an amazing campus that is built to be flexible and proactive and built to have all these sectors work together, all ocean innovators work together for solutions. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Lee to show you the campus that will have to go to the Harbor Commission for approval as well.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here to represent Gensler on this very exciting project. I think the first thing that we talked about with Jenny and Altasea and the port is that this really needs to be a place for the future. This is about the future and about our future generations. And it's also about actually creating a place where one comes to a new harmonious understanding about how land and actually sea come together. That this campus needed to embody that, but also be able to work off what we see as one of the most powerful things, which is basically the time and flow and ebb and flow of the waves, how that actually leaves its trace on land and actually forms land through its existence, and that experience and understanding is what we're trying to create here at Altasea from an emotional standpoint. This is the overall campus. This is the campus plan. You can see here the business hub, which will be warehouse 58 through 60. Which is where a lot of the incubator business will be. The research will be done in Warehouse 57. We have an engagement center in Berth 56, which is where the public will come and meet Altasea, understand what its purpose is through the various content that will be displayed and shared there. So this is actually coming into Berth 56. It is an outdoor space that actually one gets immediately a sense of sort of the lab and research that are done here, so there is a lab component there. One approaches what we call the ocean Oculus, which frames the actual berth that takes you all the way out to the sort of infinite horizon line of the ocean, and that's an intentional way of sort of presenting the ocean as this sort of infinite source of wisdom and resources. We have an auditorium that also frames similarly the same view, where people will get introduced to Altasea and various research programs and learning programs that are happening here on this campus, and an exhibition center that one moves into that will also be a place where various other types of content will be seen and can be interacted with both in a physical as well as virtual way. This is the drop-off plaza. This is where many school tours as well as other public officials would be dropped off here. You can enter the engagement center here from its east portal here, but also enter where is the research lab, which is basically Warehouse 57. Warehouse 57, this is existing condition. I think when we were all struck that these are very much the cathedrals of our time in the sense that this is where so many goods once were actually sorted out here, moved off the ships, and then transferred onto the trains on the other side of these doors, which will now become the bones for a new area where education will come together with researchers. The public can engage through these portals and actually be able to look down on these activities, because there are also controlled areas here where the public will not be allowed, where much of the research is done, but the public again can actually view into here and watch the scientists do their work and be able to learn in both sort of a first-hand manner. Most important of all, this will be a net zero campus. So given its location, we're able to take advantage of the sun, the wind, and the ocean to actually generate various forms of energy. The warehouses themselves are really great ideas in terms of creating solar farms on the roof because they're low, but they're very long. So this is ideal for creating sort of net zero buildings. We can also use the ocean water to cool this, natural ventilation through the clear stories, and ability, as I said, to put a solar farm across the entire length of these 4 long existing warehouses. The proportion of square footage of area that's actually being used to square footage of actual solar panels is very advantageous for us. We are also looking to work off the local traditions of the San Pedro area, their tradition of lighthouses, from the Port Furman Lighthouse to the Angels Gate Lighthouse to now a tower that will actually be harvesting energy as opposed to emitting energy. So there will be various components here. The SCMI, which will be working, Southern California Marine Institute, which is going to be working out of Warehouse 57, will actually be able to attach their weather and environmental research equipment onto here. We will have a solar sunflower on the top. We're looking at advanced sort of emerging technologies such as piezoelectric harvesters, which basically harvest energy by actually flapping in the wind, and that movement by the wind moving these paddles, these actually generates energy, and have that on here, but also provide an observation tower where one can actually understand the whole campus of Altasea and also the ocean beyond.
I'm loving the observation deck. I just want to be place that for the record. This is exciting. We've always called for. The last observation deck we had was early mid to late 70s at the old Port Call. This is fantastic. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And so this is I'll conclude with this shot before I hand this over to Jenny. This is basically now on the wharf side, looking back at the engagement center and the research lab and the tower over here. And the idea here is really, I think conceptually, to actually use our past to build our future. There's our past in terms of that we all came from the ocean. We ought to actually celebrate that engagement with the ocean and all that it has to offer in as many ways through research, learning, and sort of hope and inspiration. Thank you very much. And I will, why don't I switch with you, Jenny?
Can we switch?
Yeah.
Do you need this? No, I got it. So, as you can imagine, the staff and the board and all our stakeholders are so excited by these designs, which were just unveiled, I think 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And the conceptual designs have already won the Los Angeles Business Council Award and the West Side Urban Forum Conceptual Design Award. So I'll be very quick. So this is the whole vision. Now this is where we're starting. In fact, we've already started with our Chief Scientific Officer, who I wish was here today, Dr. Sander Whitehouse, who has an international reputation in kind of building these kind of ocean conservancy projects. So again, this is our mission, but I brought this back because one of the tenets of Altasea is to create jobs and to do workforce development in new, in blue economy jobs. So where we're starting, I should also say, these are all our partners. We are a multi-tenant nonprofit and umbrella organization, so our strength is our partners. So as Lee mentioned, the Southern California Marine Institute has 22 university colleges and foundations that will have their home here and are already working with us on our first 2 focuses, which are sustainable aquaculture and blue tech. And one of the reasons we chose sustainable aquaculture is by this slide. You will see how the industry is developing, and therefore there will be more jobs needed in this sector. And so we have added a workforce development to our aquaculture cluster, which is what we call the grouping of education, business, and research all together. One of the other main reasons is the only company that has received federal permits for sustainable aquaculture in the United States is the Catalina Sea Ranch, our major partner. It turns out that the plateau off of San Pedro is exceptionally good for sustainable aquaculture because, as you can see in the lower end of the slide, there's a cliff, so all nutrients kind of flow up, and it's a great place for this to start. So in this cluster, as we call it, we've got the Catalina Sea Ranch as our partner, who are already there on site, and the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium with their abalone restoration project, great education for the kids. And then Southern California Marine Institute, mainly USC, with their genomics project. And that's our first cluster already working together. The second is Blue Tech. This is robots that seems to be all yellow, but they're underwater and they're unmanned. This is the big announcement that about, I guess a month ago, we signed a planning MOU with Boeing, which we are rapidly formalizing and will formalize by the fall. They have, we're working toward having them at Altasea by the end of this year and building their footprint to 60,000 square feet, which is what they are projecting their needs will be. In the lower right, that is Echo Voyager, which is their new ROV, which is the best technology in Blue Tech. It can go 7,000 nautical miles without a support ship, and therefore helps us with all our other missions, because it can help with aquaculture, because all aquaculture needs to be monitored and you can't send divers down. It can help with energy. This is actually an ROV that can go and check lines and check things underwater. And of course, with conservation, it can go under the ice cap and help figure out what is going on with climate change. So finally, Blue Tech is our anchor tenant, is Boeing. We're very happy that that is moving forward and that their footprint will be so large. And then, of course, the Nautilus, which we announced a month ago, which will begin, they will start wintering at the Port of Los Angeles July 21st, and we are going to continue that relationship with them. Nautilus will be there from September to April. We had a meeting with LAUSD yesterday with their principals. Nautilus will be providing professional development to those schools and start with over 1,000 kids being part of their STEM programs. So Dr. Bob Ballard is the education piece there, and again, SCMI is our cluster there.
It's a perfect marriage.
Where we're starting.
Thank you, Jenny. An amazing, perfect
I'm sorry,
marriage.
speaking fast.
No, I know, and we have a long agenda.
The timing, and I apologize, we're rushing because we have 3 o'clock. Some of our members are leaving for other committees, but you guys were rushing through it, but doing a great job of doing that. I'll throw it back to Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The fact that Dr. Ballard would be here this fall creates a perfect marriage between Altasea, our educational opportunities, and vision as well, coupled with the fact with the announcement that Boeing has expressed interest in moving forward. A couple months back, colleagues, I attended the reveal of Boeing's Echo Voyager, and at that time I approached the executives and made it clear to them that the Altasea needs and ought to be the permanent home to the Echo Voyager. So I'm happy that they listen, and I'm hoping that we're moving forward. Initially, the small team to support Echo Voyager field operations. This team, Boeing's team, would expand in the future as needed to support underwater system port operations and market demand. Boeing supports Altasea's core value in public education access and will be participating in their free outreach program as well, from what I've read. And I understand that Boeing also embraces and appreciates Altasea's mission of inspiring the next generation to look to STEM fields for future employment. But, we've talked about having 2 key partners here. SpaceX has landed. Boeing is next to come. These are hundreds of jobs, and these people, educated folks, are going to come in. They're going to need housing. They're going to want to go to visit the San Pedro public market, visit our downtown San Pedro, supplement our existing businesses, and we're really excited about moving forward with this project. And the slide says funding needs $150 million, and the ambassador and I had spoke earlier today about moving forward on key dollars. How are we doing with our fundraising efforts today?
So that's the big number for the build-out, which will be completed in 2022 if the lease amendments that we're working with the port are accepted. We're doing well.
Was that a hint to the ambassador? Or?
Yes, I'm very happy to be on this thing. I'm proud to be.
Thank you, Ambassador.
We have a $7 million goal for this year, which we have identified and are comfortable that we'll make. That will get shovels. I listen to you,
Yes.
shovels.
We need shovels.
We'll be in, we actually hope to take possession this week of the first part and get that 60,000 square feet open by Q1. And then the next year is a $15 million, and we build it each year we're building.
Fantastic.
Instead of waiting for the whole money and building it.
Yeah, we want to see progress being made. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate the effort here. And Alta C is going to be a key tenet to our LA waterfront efforts. So thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and echo that.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful presentation, and we're very excited about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So technically, we will note and file this item, and we will move to number 9, which I think we can do expeditiously.
Okay. Item number 9 is a report from the city attorney and ordinance relative to amending ordinance number 181968 to extend the authority of the Board of Airport Commissioners to authorize its executive director to utilize Los Angeles World Airport's job order contract program.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Dave Shooter, LAWA Deputy Director for Facilities Management and Maintenance.
John Taviton, City Attorney's Office.
And I can be very quick because I know you're short on time. 2011 December, Council approved an ordinance which allowed us to engage in job order contracting, which is a new concept to the city, not to the county, but to the city. That ordinance expires in 5 years, essentially January of next year. We would like to amend that ordinance to not have an expiration date, number one, to raise the allowed, the authority for each general contractor job order contracting from $3 million to $6 million for a 3-year contract, and to raise the individual task orders maximum cost from $500,000 to $750,000. The reasons for extending it indefinitely is it has worked very well for us. Indefinite period will give us time to plan ahead. We have many small projects coming down that meet the way that this concept does business, and we can stagger. We only awarded one general contract during this period because it was a pilot program. We wanted to see how it goes, how it went. This will allow us to stagger. General contracts will allow us to plan ahead as a development group has more and more projects in which they want to bleed off small projects without disrupting the entire concept. Raising the minimum from $500,000 to $750,000 will allow us to take on more of the projects that we are asked to take on. I can go more into the concept.
Appreciate it. Does it help incentivize small business, use of local businesses?
It does. The concept is that the general contractor who cannot self-perform will take on or create a pool of subcontractors that have the trades of everything that we envision. Doesn't mean he's covered it all over the 3-year period. This general contractor that we have right now engaged a pool of 11 subcontractors, 9 of whom were SBE. And they created, we still have 6 months to go, but they've spent 97% of the authority. They've achieved a 29% SBE rate on the overall revenue. Some of the projects didn't support small business, like a purchase of an air handling unit or a chiller for a rooftop, but nevertheless achieved 29%.
And when you're using an in-house crew, you're talking about other subcontractors, you're talking about going to public employees?
I'm sorry?
When you're making the decision to use an in-house crew or a job order contract.
Right.
The in-house crew is who?
We have an in-house construction team, but there's certainly a capacity and a capability limitation. So we're not taking any jobs away from that crew. These are all ones for which we do not have capacity or capability.
That was what I was getting to make to make that point. This has not been an issue where folks have been. There hasn't been any pushback about the use of in-house jobs versus.
Yeah, there's been no pushback, and we manage these projects. We manage the general contractor, the contract with our in-house superintendents.
Colleagues, any questions or comments? Move the item. Okay, without objection, we'll approve this item. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have one general public comment card. Ms. Sarnoff. Thank you very much, guys. Gentlemen.
I just want to say that the biggest resource you have is the collective human talent of people that have been working on environmental issues for decades and have sent out a warning and have all the experience and the expertise, and they're not into it for money. They're just into it because they want to share what they have. And what part of that is the development of localized gardens, localized communities, and more self-sustaining communities. How long do you think we're going to live on this planet if we're shipping most of the food that is on our plate is shipped 1,500 miles, and we build bigger ports and we ship more and more stuff across oceans? Do you really think that's the wave of the future? Ask what your intentions are, ask where your heart is, and ask what you really want. What is your goal? Thank you.
Great, thank you. We also have a public comment card from Mr. Herman. Mr. Herman, let the record reflect he's not here. That being said, is there anything else on the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
Great. Then this meeting is hereby adjourned.
Thanks.